Hey, everybody, we got a great one today. Finally, a guest who has something interesting to say. Me. I'm doing this one solo, and for a couple reasons. First of all, for some reason, I could only get Norm Ornstein this week, and he's a great guest, but I want to talk a little bit, mainly because I've been in Portland, Maine this week. My wife Franny's family all live up here. She has one brother, three sisters, and her mom is here. Up here or down here, I guess in Maine, you're down east because when they sailed from Boston to Maine, they were sailing downwind. The wind was at their backs. That's an interesting tidbit you wouldn't get from any of my other guests. Yes, you would. Okay. My mother-in-law, Fran Bryson, Franny is a junior, is 98 years old. Now, I've known Fran for 52 years now. And some of you know about her story, which is Franny's story and that of her family. Fran had 5 kids. Franny was number 4. And Franny was 18 months old when her father, Donald Bryson, died in a car accident. Donald was a decorated World War II veteran, a veteran of the Battle of the Bulge. And that was really the last big battle of World War II, Hitler's last move. And it lasted like 6 weeks. We had 100,000 casualties. This is the worst battle in American history in terms of casualties. And it was really cold. And my father-in-law came back with, we believe, PTSD. He worked at a paper plant in Portland. One night between work and home, he died in a one-car crash. One car, one tree. And when my mother-in-law answered the door that night, the police officer asked her, "Was Donald Bryson your husband?" That was 69 years ago. Fran had 5 kids, age 7, Kathy. My wife, Franny, as I said, was 18 months old, and Bootsy was 3 months old. And as you can imagine, it was hard. They had next to nothing. Fran had 5 kids to take care of. They made it. They had some Social Security survivor benefits, some benefits from the Defense Department. This socialist kind of things. This is socialism. So they could eat. And sometimes they eat fried dough. I've never had fried dough. Franny tells me about fried dough. Sometimes the power company turned off the heat in the winter. This is Portland, Maine. And it can get cold up here. When Bootsy, the youngest, was old enough to go to Catholic nursery school, they took her in. The nuns took her in. God bless them. My mother-in-law got a job at the Shaw's at the supermarket. It was a couple blocks away, and she worked in the produce department, where she worked for years. Again, it was tough. And anyway, when Bootsy went to high school, my mother-in-law got a GI loan to fix her roof on the house, by the way, which she still lives in. And instead, she used it to go to college. She used that $1,000 for the first year at the University of Maine-Gorham. And then she took 3 more loans, GI loans, and graduated and became a teacher, elementary school teacher. She taught Title I kids. She taught kids, a school that had enough poor kids in it that it was a Title I school. And because of that, her loans were forgiven. All $4,000 of loans plus the interest. My brother-in-law went into the Coast Guard, where he still works. He retired from the Coast Guard, but he just still works there. And he's unbelievably talented. He runs their sonar or what, I don't know what he runs, but it's really complicated. And boy, oh boy, is the Coast Guard important. I can tell you that. And he's an unbelievably great guy. All the girls went to college. on combinations of Pell Grants and scholarships. My wife had a full scholarship to Simmons College, and that's where we met. We met in college. Every member of that family became a contributing member of our society, a member of the middle class. They tell you in our country to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. First, you have to have the boots. And the government gave my wife's family the boots. And that's why I'm a Democrat. That's why I am a Democrat. Okay. So we're taking a 5-week break here. We have shows. We have new shows lined up for you. I think we're repeating one with Heather McGhee. And we're repeating it because it's our best show ever. Sorry to all the guests I've had over the last 2+ years. If you only listen to one of my podcasts, please listen to Heather McGhee. So a few things I want to talk about today. And I guess they're all related to what we need to accomplish while we're taking our vacation in this 5 weeks. That Peter and I are taking a vacation is really dictated by Peter, my executive producer. He's in DC right now in the studio, and Peter is taking this 5-6 weeks, right?
Yeah,
Peter?
that's right. Yeah, 5 weeks,
which you do every year.
Yeah.
And thank God, so because I can take a break, and we work very hard leading up to it to have the shows to run, and they're all like they're not tied to the news of the day, but we have one on the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, which is just fascinating. We have one with Norman Lear, who, speaking of my mother-in-law, he's older than her. Yeah, Norman Lear. So we have great shows, and we've stockpiled them. And where are you going, Peter? Just tell the people where you're going. Tell the people.
We're going all over the place. We're going camping for 5 weeks. We're going through the Southwest. We're going to spend some time on the West Coast. We're going to spend a week wandering the deserts of Utah and Colorado.
You take water.
Lots of water. Lots of water.
Okay. And they say this is a dangerous desert you're going to be in, right?
We're going to do a hike that's called the Maze, which is in Canyonlands.
Okay, that sounds terrible.
Yeah. It's in Canyonlands National Park, and it's been called one of the most dangerous hikes in America.
And how old are your children?
16 and 13.
Okay. And I know you. You guys do this every year.
We do.
Yeah. Anyway, we've been doing this for it'll be 3 years in November. Peter, how many shows have we done?
This is show number 119.
Wow, and none of them good.
Not a single one.
I keep saying this is a good one, but it's never true. The first one we recorded was with Andy Slavitt, and it was right after the 2018 election. And in that election, healthcare, the ACA really was the big issue because Republicans had been promising for about 8 or 9 years to repeal the ACA and replace it, to repeal and replace with something, as the president said, the former president, Donald Trump, said during the campaign, something terrific. And what was interesting was I had been there when we wrote the damn thing. And I, very proud of my contribution to it. Many of you have heard about that. And I was going like, they've been talking about doing this for 9 years. I wonder it'll be interesting to see what their think tanks came up with, what they came up with. They had nothing. Mitch McConnell put, I think it was 13 male senators into a conference room, and the Republicans came up with a plan where 23 million Americans would lose coverage. And thank God for John McCain. He put the thumbs down. And by the 2018 elections, you may recall, people went like, holy mackerel, I like having, my pre-existing conditions covered. I like that guarantee. They had started to discover what was in the ACA, the 10 essential benefits: outpatient care, hospitalization, maternity, newborn care, laboratory services, free preventive care, all of this stuff that the ACA covered. Remember when McCain did the thumbs down that Trump did? Who knew healthcare was complicated? And the answer was everybody. But you, Putz. It's complicated. It's 1/7 of our economy. It's incredibly complicated. So anyway, that was our first, my first podcast was why we won so big. We picked up 41 seats. And you may have heard me say this is why I was against the single payer with no possibility of private insurance. Because when you flip 41 seats, you're beating Republicans. So those seats are full of moderate Republicans who voted for you. And what do those people what don't they want? They don't want their health care, their health insurance taken away from them, in many cases paid completely by their employer. Anyway, so we won big then, and that was our first podcast. Now we're at a very, very, very dangerous moment in our history. Look, maybe no one has more reason to be pissed off at Democrats in the Senate than me. And I will leave that all for another day. But I explained very emotionally why I'm a Democrat. But that doesn't mean that Democrats in Washington aren't politicians. And sometimes politicians can act out of fear and make bad decisions that they perceived to be in their immediate self-interest, and those can sometimes turn out to be mistakes, and that's human beings do that. Politicians are kind of human, and they're especially human, and they're in a public spotlight, and it can be particularly hard for some politicians to admit that they made a mistake. But I've had a number apologize to me. This brings me to a couple of things that Republicans in Congress, both in the Senate and the House, not all of them, but almost all of them have been, and that is horrible. They've just been horrible. Now, take the Supreme Court and Mitch McConnell, the changing justifications. Merrick Garland, that was too close to the election. Remember? That was too close to the election. Scalia died in early to mid-February. That was nine months from the election. So Merrick Garland was nominated 9 months from the election. That was too close to the election. So we're not going to take up Merrick Garland. And that is, that was the justification. There was nothing else. It was just too close to an election. Let the next president. Let the people decide. This is McConnell. We have an election coming up in just 9 months, and it's too close to a presidential election, and we should just let the people decide. Yeah. This was so supposedly based on principle. That's what they were saying. Republicans are saying if vacancy comes up in an election year, then you got to let the winner of the election appoint the senator. And then, and in fact, they just said it over and over again. Peter, can you play clip 1, this is Lindsey Graham. I was here for this when Lindsey made a really strong statement about this.
I want you to use my words against me. If there's a Republican president in 2016 and a vacancy occurs in the last year of the first term, you can say Lindsey Graham said, let's let the next president, whoever it might be, make that nomination, and you could use my words against me, and you'd be absolutely right.
Then in 2018, he did it again. He went before, this was at the Atlantic Monthly has some kind of conference or festival where they interview people, and they interviewed Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief, interviewed Lindsey, and he doubled down on what he had said.
If an opening comes in the last year of President Trump's term and the primary process is started, we'll wait to the next election. And I've got a pretty good chance of being the judiciary.
You're on the record.
Yeah.
All right.
Hold the tape.
Why in the Coney Barrett hearings didn't every Democrat on the committee say to Graham, who was the chairman now of the Judiciary Committee, you said to use these words against me? Okay? So you asked us, you practically begged us, really, to use these words against you. This was like as if this was your wish. You said this was your wish. This is what you wanted. 4 years from now, if this, or 4.5 years from now, please use my words against me. Because you'd be absolutely right to use my words against me. Okay, here I go. Now, Graham said this in a committee markup. I was there for this in the Judiciary Committee. Here I go. Mr. Chairman, you said, and I quote, if a vacancy occurs in the last year of the first term, you can say Lindsey Graham said, let the next president, whoever it might be, make that nomination. And you can use my words against me. I'm doing what you suggested. I'm using your words against you. And by the way, I have 30 minutes. And I might use all 30 minutes to use your words against you, Mr. Chairman. You said that almost 9 months before the election in 2016. We are now 2.5 weeks away from the election. But then, in October of 2018, you doubled down. You were interviewed on camera, and you said, an opening comes in the last year of President Trump's term, and the primary process has started. We'll wait till the next election. And then you start to say, I've got a pretty good chance, and I think you're about to say I have a good chance of being chairman of the Judiciary Committee, but I don't know for sure. But then Jeffrey Goldberg interrupts you from the Atlantic, and he says, you're on the record. And you said, yeah, all right, hold the tape, meaning hold the tape, use it against me. And that's what I'm doing. I'm using this against you. And by the way, the lame excuse you now give for this is the way Democrats treated Kavanaugh. The Atlantic Monthly conference where you said an opening comes in the last year of President Trump's term and the primary process has started. We'll wait till the next election. Hold the tape. That was after Kavanaugh had been confirmed. After he had been confirmed. Now, remember that last Kavanaugh hearing when you just were convulsed with rage? This is what you said about the Democrats on this committee. Boy, you all want power. God, I hope you never get it. I hope the American people can see through this sham. This is a sham. And your own words speak to what a sham this is. You are a hypocrite, Mr. Chairman. Think about how you treated Merrick Garland based on a fake principle. You have no principles. None of you. You're all hypocrites. Senator Grassley, I used to have respect for you, but I don't now because you're a hypocrite and you know it. And what's more, you don't care. Senator Cornyn, you're a hypocrite. Senator Cruz, my opinion of you hasn't changed. Now, I have 25 minutes left, and I'd like to use it to repeat what I've just been saying, just, a little harsher. You see, you liars! Okay. Justice Ginsburg, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, died in September, the middle of September 18th. Tony Barrett, by the way, was sworn in 9 days before the election. How dare you? You guys are hypocrites. And now it's changed again. Mitch McConnell said, if we take the Senate in the midterms, we're not going to allow President Biden to take up a nominee. Because in the history of our country, that's just not been done many times. That's some kind of principle if it's only been done a few times. And what this brings me to is they have no shame whatsoever. They have no qualms whatsoever. Now, we don't have 50 Democratic senators who will say, let's end the filibuster. Boy, are we chumps. McConnell, look, the reason they didn't get rid of the filibuster when Trump came in and they had both houses of Congress and could have passed anything they wanted was they don't want to pass things. They don't want to do things. They never wanted Social Security. They didn't want that. They didn't want Medicare. They didn't want that. It was socialism. Social Security was socialism. They don't want to do anything. This is what they wanted to do. They wanted to flood the courts with judges, with Federalist Society judges, all Federalist Society judges. That's what they wanted to do. And let me explain what they did, which was different and which I don't think people understand. They got rid of what's called the blue slip. Now, what's the blue slip? Okay. I was senator from Minnesota. I was 1 and 2. So Minnesota's seat on the 8th Circuit comes vacant, and Don McGahn, Trump's White House counsel, calls me and tells me that they want to nominate David Strauss, a Minnesota Supreme Court justice who had been on Trump's first shortlist for the Supreme Court, which he had released before the 2016 election. And remember, during the 2016 campaign, Trump pledged to pick only judges whom the Federalist Society had approved. Well, I'm sorry. I don't want anybody to fill Minnesota's vacancy on the 8th Circuit who was on the Federalist Society's shortlist. So I go, no, I won't turn in my blue slip. Now, what does that mean? It means we have a veto. This isn't in the Constitution. It's just a custom that had been observed for 100 years, for over 100 years. And here's what's good about it. What I would have done and what I offered to do is I said, I'll put a bipartisan committee together in Minnesota of very, very respected jurists and law professors, and we'll appoint a Republican. I mean, we'll pick a Republican for you to nominate that I will approve. And that's the way it had been done. And you know what you end up getting? You're getting a federal judiciary that's respected. You get a federal judiciary where you don't automatically know how a judge is going to rule, how a circuit judge is going to rule by what president he was nominated by. Because what you end up with are really good jurists, Republicans and Democrats. And yeah, you get some indication of the leanings of a judge who was nominated by a Republican president and approved by a Republican senator or Senate, or a judge nominated by a Democratic president who I handed in my blue slip for. But you get really good jurists who people respect. But what they did was take away the blue slip. So Judge Strauss is on the Eighth Circuit. And they just populate. They go boom, 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 boom. Right wing, right wing, right wing, right wing, right wing, Federalist Society, Federalist Society, Federalist Society. And by the way, do you remember Trump saying very often, well, there were all these vacancies. Shame on Obama. No, shame on Cruz. Shame on McConnell, shame on Rand Paul, shame on Cornyn, because they wouldn't turn in their blue slips and they wouldn't appoint a committee to pick someone who's reasonable. They just wanted to hold that seat open until they got a Republican president. So that's why there were all these vacancies. And you know what? I mean, the blue slip ain't returning. Democrats now control the majority, and the president is going to nominate judges. Democrats aren't suddenly going to go, for 100 years, that blue slip, that was a great system. Why don't we reinstate it now? No. So for the rest of time, when you get a judge, depending on what administration appointed him, now you know exactly how they're going to come down. And of course, we just saw in the Supreme Court a few voting rights decisions that went completely along 6-3 party lines. And 6-3, guess which 6 and guess which 3 decided that these Arizona voting laws, election laws, that are designed to suppress votes were legal. They overruled a decision by the Ninth Circuit that said these 2 election laws weren't constitutional. Okay, let me tell you what they are. Or let's focus on one. So Arizona said that if you vote in the wrong precinct, they throw out your vote. And it's very well known that people of color vote in the wrong precinct about twice as much as white people. And that's for a whole bunch of reasons. One of it is about patterns where how often people change their residence. It's also about deliberate changing of voting sites. That's really common. And so they made a law where if you cast your vote in the wrong precinct, and you can cast it the wrong precinct at the same polling place, then they'll throw it out. Okay, now I have an audio. This is Michael Carvin, who's a Republican election lawyer. Justice Coney Barrett asks him, what is the purpose of this law to throw out these votes that are cast in the wrong precinct?
What's the interest of the Arizona RNC here in keeping, say, the out-of-precinct ballot disqualification rules on the books?
Because it puts us at a competitive disadvantage relative to Democrats. Politics is a zero-sum game.
Okay, he's saying the only purpose of the law is to help Republicans to win. It has nothing to do with fraud. Nothing to do with fraud. If there was any evidence that allowing votes that were cast in the wrong precinct contributes to fraud, wouldn't you think he'd have brought it up? He's there, the Republican lawyer arguing this in front of the Supreme Court. You'd think if there was evidence that this contributed to fraud in some way, because that's what this is all supposedly about. And there is no fraud. There's as close to zero fraud in this country. And by the way, the fraud that is exposed usually is Republican fraud. So Michael Carvin, who is this guy? He's a conservative election lawyer, obviously, arch-conservative election lawyer. And Republicans, these conservative election lawyers and conservatives and Republicans love to accuse Democrats of fraud. Publicly, evidently, but not in court. Because in court, you just might need some evidence. I was on the Judiciary Committee, but I wasn't a lawyer. But I know about evidence. I think I heard that in somewhere on TV. If you had evidence of fraud, you might want to produce it. If you had evidence that people voted in the wrong precinct, were deliberately doing that to commit fraud, you might present that. But no. So instead of looking foolish by asserting that the law somehow, catches people who are blatantly cheating. No, he says the law helps us win. Come on, it's 6-3 Republican court. So that's what he's saying. Come on, you guys. It's 6-3. Helps us. You see, it helps us win, you guys, and there's 6 of you and only 3 of them. So that's what I'm saying. My God. And then Justice Roberts, gets Mr. Carvin. Yes, Justice Roberts. Ixnay on the artisan pay advantage A. I mean, what the hell? So he's on tape. Now, who is this Carvin? Okay, so he testified before the Judiciary Committee in 2013. This is after the Voting Rights Act, the pre-clearance part, the most important part of the Voting Rights Act, was struck down by Chief Justice Roberts and 4 others, the 5-4 decision. And what's pre-clearance? Pre-clearance is there are these states and counties and certain jurisdictions that historically had suppressed the votes of people of color. What states? Think like Louisiana or, Mississippi or Alabama or Georgia or South Carolina or North Carolina or Virginia or Texas or Kentucky or okay, those states and counties, and there were some in the North that had done this too. If they changed their voting rules, they had to have it pre-cleared by the Justice Department, the Justice Department of the United States. So what happened? There was much, much less voter suppression because of pre-clearance. And this was in the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Pre-clearance was struck down in the Shelby County decision. Shelby County is a county in Alabama. They protested some pre-clearance that forbade them from doing something. They sued the government. And by a 5-4 decision, they threw out pre-clearance. And basically, Roberts said, it's worked. There just isn't, no one's suppressing, but there's not discrimination. And Justice Ginsburg said, no, this is like throwing out your umbrella when you're not getting wet because you have the umbrella. It's like, I'm not getting wet. I guess I don't need the umbrella. She said it more eloquently than that. But that's what she said. And she was absolutely right. Immediately, states that had been prejudiced before, that had suppressed votes before, started doing it again. So immediately, it took weeks for North Carolina to put in place a voting system, which the United States Fourth Circuit said had targeted blacks with almost surgical precision to suppress their votes. So Roberts was wrong. Ginsburg was right. Duh. And now this decision by the court, this 6-3 decision, just is the most significant decision since 13. So Carvin, we have hearings, right? And we have the majority. We have hearings because we don't have the majority in the House. So it's going to be tough. We have to rewrite the voting rights law so that we can get preclearance back. And that's going to take some doing. And so we have hearings on it, how to write that, et cetera. Well, Carvin shows up. He's there. It gets to Ted Cruz. Now, Ted Cruz had only been there a little while. He got elected in November of 12. This is 13. He gets toward the end of the questioning, or the first round anyway. And the first thing he says to Carvin is, "You and I know each other very well. We're in the same law firm early on in our careers. And I promise you 3 things. First, I will tell no tales. I will tell no tales." Now, I have been trying to figure out what kind of asshole Cruz was. Because I'm thinking, is he a Texas asshole? Is he a right-wing asshole? What kind of... I know he's an asshole. That's immediately apparent by everyone. As I've said, I like Ted Cruz probably more than almost any of my colleagues like Ted Cruz. And I hate Ted Cruz. But I liked him a little bit because he was a fan of comedy. And so every once in a while he'd come up to me and say, "I saw the Michael Jordan thing last night with Stuart Smalley. That was great." And I go, "I like him." A little bit. And then I'd talk to him about something else and that'd go away. So I'm going like, what kind of asshole is Ted? What kind of asshole? And when he says, "I will tell no tales," I go, "Oh, he's an Ivy League asshole. I shall tell no tales." So I went like, oh, okay. And now, for example, when he went to Harvard Law, his first year at Harvard Law, he'd gone to Princeton. He'd gone undergrad to Princeton. First year at Harvard Law, first week, he wants to organize a study group up to his standards. So he puts up a posting on bulletin boards saying, "I'd like to form the study group, no minor Ivies." Now, what does that mean? That means only Yale, Princeton, and Harvard undergrad. Now, if you wanted to put up something that just said, "I am a major league asshole," I could not think of anything. You could put me on a desert island for 100 years. I could not think of anything better than no minor Ivies. I didn't learn that because then I would have said, "Oh, he's an Ivy League asshole" before this, but I learned that since. And I've corresponded with the guy who wrote about that. So this is who Cruz is. Now, I will tell no tales. Can you imagine what tales he has from young Michael Carvin and young Ted Cruz? "Oh, yeah, we stole a truck, a pickup truck, and drove to the Southwest and got involved with a drug gang in Albuquerque, crystal meth, and we ended up, we had to kill a couple guys. Don't worry, I shall tell no tales." How exciting could their tales be? Maybe they got drunk with Kavanaugh. Maybe that's it. All this leads to, they are ruthless. They will do anything. By all rights, we should end the filibuster and then pack the courts. Pack the Supreme Courts. Why? Because we can. That's why we should do it. Well, also, it's justified. Look how inconsistent their justification has been. McConnell will do anything. He has no shame. That's our problem. Let's just be ruthless. If we had the ability to do this, to get rid of the filibuster and just pack the courts, but we're not going to do that. Now, as you know, and I've talked about this a number of times on the podcast, that Norm Ornstein and I have put together I think a really, really good modification of the filibuster. And it won't do what I said I would do, which, of course, Manchin and Sinema are not going to get rid of the filibuster. Manchin has said this. But he has said he's open to modifying it. And, he should be, because look what they've done. For example, he wanted the January 6th commission, Manchin. He got Republicans to say they'd vote with him. McConnell said to them in caucus, yeah, as a favor, I want you to vote against it. Now, as a favor, I said this on Brian Williams' show. I said, I think that's some kind of code. And Brian Williams immediately said, I think we've seen that code in a lot of Scorsese movies. Pretty fast comeback, really good. But that's essentially what it is. Well, he's willing to play like that. We got to play like that. So let's do the filibuster that we're talking about, and I think you've heard me talk about it if you're a regular listener, is that instead of 60 to end a filibuster, you need 41 to keep it going, to sustain it. 41, in this case, Republicans would have to go to the floor and vote to continue the filibuster. And then they'd have to stay there and debate. They'd have to hold the floor. They'd have to keep 41 there. This is what basically the filibuster used to be. So this is restoring it to what it used to be. And they don't have to do a Strom Thurmond. No one has to be there for an hour talking and holding the floor. Look, there's 41 of them. They can talk for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. No green eggs and ham like Cruz did when he filibustered. It has to be germane. I'd love to hear this debate. I would love to hear this debate. And I think the American people would love to hear this debate. There's not enough debate in the Senate. And you know what? These guys, they're not going to stay there. They're just not going to stay there. Chuck Grassley, I'm 87 years old. I can't, And yeah, you cut Chuck. Okay, you only have to take an hour or so, I don't know. And Hawley, you're young. You just stay here. The point is that it used to be rare that we had filibusters. It used to be very rare. Now everything is filibustered. It only takes one person going, I object to filibuster. And then it takes 60 to break it. So anything can get filibustered. And it's just incredibly frequent. This would make it rare. And making it rare means do it when it's important. Do it when it's important to you. Mitch McConnell, during Obama's time, he filibustered more federal nominees, nominees from the president than had been filibustered in the previous entire history of the United States. This has been abused. So you don't have to get rid of the filibuster. If you're listening, Joe, this modification really makes a lot of sense. So think about it. I want everyone to remember, if you haven't heard this before, to know that I'm on tour. I'll be on tour in the fall, starting September 18th, and in Northampton, Mass. And then I'm doing a 15-city tour. And you can go to alfranken.com to see where I'm going. But I'm going all over the place. And this is going to be a lot of fun for me, and I think also for the audience. And by the way, Anti-vaxxers, get in free if you'll be vaccinated. Okay, good. So we'll see you next week. It'll be a great one, for a change. Have a great week, everybody.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening. That beautiful music is by Leo Kottke, the great Leo Kottke. I want to thank Peter Ogburn for producing this podcast. We'll talk again next week.